For weary Victorians, it's a well-known routine. Another statewide lockdown, this time for 7 days.
If we make the wrong choice now, if we wait too long, this thing will get away from us.
What I like is that this is a go hard, go early response. It's a big price to pay, but the payoff is COVID zero, and COVID zero is so precious.
The speed of this latest outbreak is worrying Victorian health authorities. The Indian variant traced back to the original case of a man who spent time in hotel quarantine in South Australia. Cases have grown to 34, with 10,000 primary and secondary contacts identified and more than 150 exposure sites.
How long it takes between the onset of symptoms in the first and secondary case is averaging just over a day. Now, to put that in some perspective, the usual transmission is about 5 to 6 days.
Victorians will return to the 4 reasons for leaving home: essential supplies, authorised work, limited exercise and caregiving. And there's now a 5th reason: to get vaccinated.
The only pathway through this pandemic is for people to get vaccinated as soon as they are eligible.
First supply issues and then vaccine hesitancy have plagued the rollout. Under the government's original schedule, more than 10 million doses were due by now. Today, the government said Australia would hit 4 million shots by the end of the week.
If we had the Commonwealth's vaccine program effectively rolled out, we may well not be here today.
Well, I personally think that it would have been hard for the vaccine rollout to have stopped this outbreak. I mean, clearly, if we had a very high proportion of Victorians immunised by now, it would have made a difference. But I think that that would have always been a hard ask. What would have made a big difference to this outbreak is hotel quarantine and stopping the leaks.
We're working closely with the Victorian government. So my sole purpose is to work with them to address the challenges that Victorians are facing right now.
Many vulnerable Australians with disability, including 45-year-old Raymond Ruff, have been left wanting. Less than a quarter of the 26,000 people with a disability living in residential care have been vaccinated. Raymond's mother and carer Margaret told 7:30 last month she feared for her son's safety if there were another outbreak. Now it's upon them.
The fact that we're going into an outbreak is terrifying. This state has not got a good record for dealing with COVID. And now my son has been left lingering, waiting for people to do what their professional job is and make sure he's got an injection. I'm terrified. He doesn't go out of the house. We don't want the drink money.
Margaret's among the thousands of Victorians spurred by the latest outbreak to get vaccinated.
Look. The blame comes directly to federal government, and they had the cheek to go on TV and say that they prioritised aged care over disability. How pitiful are they? They can't do 2 at once. How pitiful.
I know, Mum, relax. I know where you are. Everything is okay.
Abe Schwartz's 92-year-old mother is also waiting for her vaccine. She has dementia and lives at an aged care home in Melbourne's inner north, run by Jewish Care.
I'm worried. It makes me very concerned. We're talking about the most vulnerable demographic in the community.
This afternoon, Jewish Care Victoria were told all residents would be vaccinated tomorrow. Despite the federal government promising in February that aged care centres across the country would be vaccinated in 6 weeks, today 16 facilities in Victoria hadn't received a single shot.
In Victoria, 582 facilities done prior to today, another 7 today and the final 9 tomorrow.
I understand as an Australian citizen that the federal government has full responsibility for the COVID vaccination rollout, especially to aged care homes. So I put this fairly and squarely on Scott Morrison and the government.
This makes me very concerned for those residents, but also their families who are now very worried because they'll most likely be locked out again. And as we heard with the Royal Commission, these lockdowns in aged care homes had devastating effects on residents' physical and mental health.
To speed things up, aged care residents in Victoria won't have to wait 2 weeks after their flu shot to be vaccinated against COVID.
I wrote to those facilities today as the Chief Medical Officer to give my advice that should be changed for this specific event at this specific time.
The fear of catching COVID has superseded any hesitancy in Victoria, with vaccination centres overflowing.
Just getting ready for our COVID vaccine clinic. It's just 7:45.
For the last 48 hours, we've noticed quite a significant change. There's been a lot more demand for COVID vaccination. I think we're booked out now for a lot of our vaccinations, which is a complete and utter change compared to, say, 2 or 3 weeks ago, or even earlier last week. We had vaccines stockpiling in the fridges, and it was really quite frustrating.
Dr Dominic Blanks works at a medical clinic in Castlemaine in central Victoria. It's about 30 minutes drive from Bendigo, where there are 2 businesses listed as exposure sites.
That's bringing up a lot more sort of anxiety. Previously, I think there was a complacency among the general population. There was the idea of, well, we don't have any community spread of COVID, whereas now that's just completely turned on its head.
Dr Blank says patients appear less concerned about extremely rare blood clots from the AstraZeneca vaccine.
That's changed now. The last couple of days that people are just going, look, I just made up my mind, let's just go. And I haven't had anyone sort of come in wanting that reassurance that they're doing the right thing.
Hotel quarantine continues to be a weakness in Australia's approach. Months before this latest outbreak, workers in hotel quarantine in Adelaide were complaining about serious safety breaches.
Workers were coming forward to us saying, we're really very worried about this. They were worried that an infection would be likely because all the protocols were simply not being observed.
The United Workers Union wrote to South Australia's Health Minister outlining concerns over a lack of training, onerous workloads and a disregard for basic protocols. But the Minister declined to meet with the union, which says the department has now made it harder to report safety issues.
A chilling effect on anyone speaking out now are letters that have been sent to employees from the South Australian Health requiring them to sign non-disclosure agreements. And those agreements mean that even where people have concerns, they don't have any ability to raise them.
The Minister told 7:30 that many hotels in South Australia have since undergone several reviews and improvements. Some state premiers have been quick to pull the lockdown lever, but some experts say they're not always needed when contact tracing may be more effective. Epidemiologist Catherine Bennett says this lockdown will buy time to contact trace, but she's questioned the extent of the lockdown.
I'm not sure why it's statewide. That wasn't made clear. We've only had the one location or a couple of locations out the Bendigo way identified to date. And we haven't heard anything about the nature of these new cases. They seem to be close contacts mainly, though they did mention casual. So it depends if we're seeing people associated with more diverse and more widespread sites. That makes it harder to limit your lockdown. But at the same time, statewide lockdown's a pretty big step, particularly closing schools in regional Victoria.
Victoria seems like we've had the worst of it.
It's another setback for the hospitality sector, trying to get on with business in a COVID-safe way. When 7:30 visited this restaurant in Brunswick during last year's second wave, owner Lily Nartai Stokes was pivoting for her life. She's again having to adapt.
We face a really, really challenging decision now of, do we close and let it all blow over and not risk any exposure even through takeaway? We're cancelling bookings, we're refunding deposits, we're telling people they can't have their 30th or their 50th. It's not fun.
We're just going to have to wait and see for a few days at least yet to see whether this lockdown is going to be enough. Because if there has been a significant spread, then there's kind of every chance there'll be an extension of the lockdown.
Hopefully, 7 days is the number they've given us. That might shift. It might hopefully potentially become shorter if in fact they're not seeing cases outside those close contacts.
Hi, I'm Lee Sales. Thanks for watching this story. If you'd like to watch more of 730's stories, they are on the left of your screen. And tap on the button below to subscribe and get the latest from ABC News.